That's a great example of when that gets translated back to us because we went through this telephone game and asked our Japanese assistant editors to actually retranslate from the Japanese. Don't give me the scripted subtitles. Give us what they actually said. Well, we could take that and we say, well, that's a much better line, so let's use that.
Yeah.
Yo,
Hi.
hello. Shogun is phenomenal. You guys call this an epic event, and it lives up to every expectation. Every episode feels like a movie on such a grand scale. But the first question I have, Rachel, is set the stage for us. What sets Ishido and Toranaga at odds with each other?
Whoa, let's get into it. All right. So this is our story takes place 1 year after the Taiko has passed. The Taiko was the reigning power, and he had smartly set up a council of regents that was composed of 5 very powerful lords. And Ishido has very smartly figured out a way to steer 3 of those lords towards his cause, and the 4 of them have now decided to try to take down who seems like the most powerful of them all.
Now, Justin, a lot of this show is in Japanese, but the writer's room was primarily English speakers. Can you talk about the translation process and if anything changed during the translation process that was different in the show, that was different, that was going to be on the show?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, so much nuance was added when we began to work with our process of Japanese translation. It started, we would write these scripts in English. They would be sent to Japan to be translated by a team of translators out there who would then give the work in Japanese to a Japanese playwright who specialized in jidaigeki, period Japanese language, kind of giving it this extra polish that made it ready for performance. So Hiro Sanada, one of our producers and our star, and Eriko Miyagawa would then look at that dialogue in Japanese, and still, before we started shooting it, even as we're on set about to shoot it, they would just cross things out, make adjustments. No, let's get a little closer to the meaning here. And then the actors would sort of add their layers of performance that would bring things out. The best example that I can think of is Mariko's line at the end of the first episode, which you should probably tell.
So initially we had written it to be where Toranaga is asking Mariko if her faith, her Christian faith, will conflict with her devotion and her loyalty and her duty to him as her Lord. And her response to him was, if I was just a Christian, then yes, it would, but I am more than one thing. Take that line, put it through the telephone game of what we just said, and years later, we find out that the actual translation of that in Japanese was, if I were just Christian, yes, but I have more than one heart.
Sure.
And how much more lyrical and poetic and
on theme.
And on theme. Oh, yeah. Yes. Is that, and we could have never come up with that.
So that's a great example of when that gets translated back to us because we went through this telephone game and asked our Japanese assistant editors to actually retranslate from the Japanese. Don't give me the scripted subtitles. Give us what they actually said. Well, we could take that and we say, well, that's a much better line, so let's use that.
Yeah.
And sort of let the process take control of itself in some way and tell you what it wants to be, as opposed to trying to impose yourself over it.
I love that theme. I love that theme of the 3 hearts and the 8-fold fence. For those that may not understand what that is, can you kind of explain that a little bit?
The idea of the 8-fold fence is something that that within the Japanese culture they are taught from a very, very, very young age, and it is a mechanism by which one would use it to hide, protect, retreat. And keep one's true self in order to protect, hide, retreat, do these things away from the noise and the chaos of the world, and to know that you've got this safe place in which to exist, even though you might be presenting as something else.
Yeah, and it's a corollary of that to say that the 3 hearts, as expressed by James Clavell, in his book, and we took that into our show, is this idea that any man has three hearts: one that they, wear on their chest for the world to see, another they keep in their mouth just for their friends, and then this deep secret heart, kind of hidden behind this eightfold fence, if you will, that is really just for no one but themselves to ever know.
And even then, maybe not fully. It is the truest essence of who you are.
Yeah, and that no one is privileged to that but oneself, and what kind of protective layer that can be.
Another question I have for you is, I love the relationship we kind of see explored with Mariko and Blackthorn. They have a lot of parallels, but they contrast a lot as well. It's like they're both living in these invisible cages. Can you talk to me about how we see their relationship and bond progress throughout the course of the series?
Well, first of all, I'll just say, James Clavell would be nodding his head at that
vigorously.
Invisible cage. It's a beautiful way to describe the state of Mariko's marriage when we first meet her, the place where she's been put by her husband, but also by that class of society around her that has kind of dictated and defined her narrative based on what they believe it to be. And I'll just say, and I'm curious, Rachel, you can add to it, but the journey in a lot of ways for Mariko over the course of this story is to take back that narrative for herself.
Sure.
And to find it on her own terms in a real way. And then Blackthorn exists kind of secondary and as a corollary to that narrative.
Yeah, I think what they first connect over is the fact that the two of them are people who exist in the space between two worlds, right? Mariko is a woman from Japan, and yet she is of a faith system that doesn't belong to the Japanese people. There are all these instances in which she occupies this nebulous space, and I think similarly, Blackthorn does too. And I think their journeys, the way that they evolve, is that Mariko learns to hone in on that, right, and to return to that, and to keep that essence intact. And then what I think Blackthorn's evolution is to almost get himself out of the way so he can see what she's doing and respect it, and to learn how to love that, and to learn who she is, and learn to love who she is for who she is, not because she's some extension of him or she's a part of his narrative. She existed before him, and yes, we'll just leave it there. Sorry.
This show is absolutely phenomenal on every single level, from the writing, acting, and Helen Jarvis's production design. Absolutely incredible. Thank you guys so much for your time. I can't wait for folks to watch this show. It's incredible.
Thank you.